Today's webinar is called Designing the Perfect Dashboard, Simple, Usable, Slick, and Actionable. And this webinar is being brought to you by Situated Research and myself, Michelle Ann Sherritt. I am the VP and co-founder here at Situated Research, and we've done this webinar a few times. It is our most popular webinar, so we do try to do it at least once a month. So today's session is going to be recorded. The webinar will be available to you folks either at the end of today or tomorrow. And so if you know that you have to leave early or you know people who would benefit from the webinar, you can share the link with them. Questions today we're going to do a little bit different. We normally do a whole Q&A session at the very end of the webinar. But today what we're going to do is try something different. When you have a question in your upper right-hand chat or question box, just simply type it in. And our moderators are going to go ahead and look through those questions. And as we go through the slides, if there's a question that seems pretty important, we're going to go ahead and address it during the webinar instead of waiting all the way to the end. This webinar in particular sometimes does go over an hour. So with that being said, let's get going and make sure with those questions that you type them in right away and we'll address them right away. Today's hashtag is Situ Research Dash, so for dashboards. So go ahead and follow us on Twitter. And I do want to tell you just a little bit about Situated Research. You all were redirected to our website when you signed up for today's session, but just wanted to tell you a little bit more about who we are. We here at Situated Research evaluate the user experience in situ, which means in the actual environment where products are used. So our situated approach means that we study the entire environment in which cognitive and social interactions occur. So our techniques uncover users' practices and behaviors that suggest ways in which technology is expected to behave. So these insights allow us to create spot-on, easy-to-use solutions that balance aesthetics with functionality. And we started the company in 2008, and we are located just on the outskirts of Chicago. Founders are myself and then my husband, Dr. Sherritt. That's a little bit about us. If you want to learn more about us and the services that we provide to our clients, just visit our website at situatedresearch.com. So we have a lot to go over today. We have 9 topics, and we're going to just plow through each one. And like I said, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them in your questions or chat box, and we'll address them as they come in. So the first topic that we will discuss today is designing usability into dashboards. But before we can do that, we need to talk about what a dashboard is. Sometimes there's confusion. So a dashboard basically is a user interface that presents information to users in a simple way, hopefully. We get a lot of clients who come to us with prototypes of their software and their dashboards, and it's overwhelming for the users, and it's not presented, the information isn't presented in a simple way for them. And so it makes it a confusing experience. So this is the proper definition of a dashboard. We're going to show you today how to make your dashboard simple. So we have some dashboards that are analytical. So these dashboards can display operational or strategic data. So some of you attending today produce these types of dashboards. You have drill down functionality. So this is allowing users to explore more of the data and get different insights and different perspectives on the data. Sometimes there's different visualizations as well, maybe a bar graph as opposed to a line graph. Just the way the data is presented to the user. So different user groups require different types of dashboards. They're looking for different things. Your marketing manager could be looking for both strategic and operational views of your data. Where possible, create these 2 separate dashboards, because managers could be wanting a certain view and other people, developers, whoever your users are, could be looking at it at a different view as well. So you need to make separate dashboards for the separate users. So great dashboards. This is just a sample of some great dashboards on iPads, large screens and monitors, mobile devices. So a great dashboard will look great everywhere on any device. And it will be clean, it will be simple, and information will be presented and readily available for the user. So how do we get to have a great dashboard? Well, first, there's a lot of planning involved, and we're going to take you through that process today. So you get your meeting together, you decide that you're going to be developing a piece of software, you need a good dashboard for that software, you plan it out, usually paper prototyping is done, and then it goes to production. So something that's missing in there is usability. So some key questions, that you need to ask yourself is, who will use this dashboard? Who are my users going to be? What actions are to be taken as a result of the dashboard? So we're going to be presenting data and information to our users. Then what are they going to do with it? Are they going to build reports? Are they just simply going to look at the data and that's all? Are they just going to grab certain pieces of data and make a spreadsheet? What are they going to do with it? And how will it help the user work better, smarter, and faster? Because that's our end goal. So user adoption weighs heavily on the ease with which the dashboard can be used and the corresponding actions the users will take. So the drill down method in the brainstorming stage is very important. Dashboard usability demands careful drill down on how the business or units function that will be using the dashboard, what business processes are involved, and who is using the dashboard and why. So the first step is to gather information. What is the definition of your dashboard? What is its main purpose? Next, you need to look at business cases where the dashboard will be used. So these are different cases and scenarios where a user will be using the dashboard. And then you can look at return on investment, sizing considerations, data definitions, and the blueprint of your dashboard. So who's involved usually in this process? And we have all of these people attending today. We have people from IT departments, developers, managers, business leaders, decision makers who are attending today. And those are all the people who will be involved in the design process. So for IT, they're actually building the dashboard to our specifications. Management, they want to understand the function of the dashboard and make sure that it's presenting data in a logical way for users. And business leaders have that return on investment agenda. They want to make sure that the users are happy so that they get their return. So this takes many meetings with all three. And there's a discovery phase, there's brainstorming, there's mock-ups, workshops where whiteboarding may occur, workflows, supporting content, data definitions, all of this lumped into that first step. But the problem is, most of the time, and I would say about 85% of the time, usability experts or UX consultants are not involved. And usability experts are left out of the process. And it's a big disadvantage to companies who are developing dashboards to leave these key people out. Because after all, you're creating a product for your users. And if you're not designing for the users, what's the point? So what can usability experts do? We've been doing this long enough that we know what key questions to ask during the brainstorming process. It's critical to be involved within the brainstorming process because the people at the company, the IT people, the developers, the managers, the business leaders, all have different ideas of what this dashboard should look like, how it should function, what's its purpose. So usability experts have been doing this for years, and they know during the brainstorming process what key questions to ask those stakeholders. Expert reviews can also be done. Sometimes we're not brought in the brainstorming process, and the company comes up with a prototype, which is about 95% of the time now. And they come up with a prototype, and they then have us come in and do expert reviews or actually test their product with users. And expert reviews are conducted after the mock-up sessions. So either paper prototyping or you actually have a prototype developed. We've worked with a couple of healthcare software companies that have built dashboards, and they then contact us to have us look at it, have our experts look at it. And so with expert reviews, we just have one of our expert UX consultants look over the dashboard, and we come up with a report, usually between 60 to 120 pages, just depending on how much we find that needs to be fixed. And we also offer solutions, obviously, to help fix those problems. So it goes beyond looking for glitches within the dashboard. It goes into user psychology. It goes into color psychology. It goes into how does this interface look to the user? What do users want? So we actually talk to users as well. So that goes into testing, involving users to test out the new dashboard. And that should actually be done throughout the development process. There's rounds and rounds of development. We worked with a couple of software companies and just recently, and the projects that we're working on, we're just constantly going through that cycle where we're doing an expert review. Then the developers are tweaking it. Then they're giving it back to us. We're looking at it again. Just keep doing that expert review of designing about 3 or 4 rounds, and then bringing in users to actually test the dashboard to look for things that the UX consultants might not have picked up on, and actually talking to users. So that's kind of the process that we take our clients through. So the second topic that we want to touch upon today are differences between actionable dashboards and customized homepages for websites. A lot of people don't think of websites as having dashboards, but the homepages actually are the dashboard for the entire website. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So we have actionable dashboards that help users to see data in an easy to understand format. We worked with a healthcare software company last year, and they were trying to present certain information to the users who would use the software. And the data that was being presented in all these different kinds of bar graphs, and the labeling wasn't right, and users didn't know what the heck they were talking about. And it just wasn't a good situation. They were providing way too much information. You could click on one bar and it would go deeper into the data and give you more data and give you another bar graph. And there were like 20 different layers of these bar graphs, and it was just too complicated. And it wasn't simple for the users. So having information easy to understand format is very, very important. Interacting with the data is also important. It's nice when the user can use sliders because that helps them to perform what if analysis. What if the data actually was lower than what the real data was? What would be our outcome? Maybe it's for sales or whatever it may be for. So having that data be interactive with the user can be key sometimes to the success of a dashboard. And the user then can adjust the data to see how it would impact certain decisions. Alerts, trending, patterns, these are all things that should be within your dashboard so that a user can say, oh, this is alerting me that this is, not good data for this unit at our company. We need to take a look at their sales or whatever it may be. What's trending? Are there any patterns between departments or whatever the functionality of the dashboard is? Gauges can also be kind of fun to put into your dashboards because those are sometimes can be interactive with your users, or it's just a good visualization to give to your users. Drill down charts are also good, but don't make the mistake that one of our clients made, as I talked about just a little bit ago, about how they had 20 different layers of data. It just got overcomplicated for the clients. So allow even the least tech-savvy user to be a data analyst. So there's 3 types of actionable dashboards. There's operational, strategic, executive, and analytical. So we're going to talk about the first one, which is operational dashboards. These dashboards display data that facilitate the operational side of a business. So website monitoring, like Google Analytics, can show you load times and speeds for each page. It can show you who's been on the page, how long they've been on the page, what's the bounce rate, et cetera, et cetera. And you can monitor the nerve center of your operation through operational dashboards. Then there's strategic dashboards. This provides key performance indicators that a company's executive team tracks on a periodic basis. It should provide the executive team with high-level overview of the state of the business together with opportunities the business faces. So examples of data could be periodic revenue, costs, headcount, the sales pipeline. And then we have analytical dashboards, which we just touched upon. They can display operational or strategic data. They do have that drill down functionality, so that allows the users to explore more of the data and get different insights. Just remember not to make it too many layers. Different user groups require different types of dashboards, so make those available. You can do it depending on the login of certain people, making just managers see certain things, making sure marketing just sees certain things. So the marketing manager may need both strategic and operational view of the data. So you want to create those separate dashboards as we talked about earlier. And customized home pages, like I said, websites, their home pages are their dashboard. So a customized homepage is a static page made for a certain group of users. It's not interactive and it does not upload data in real time, but it is the dashboard for the website. It kind of sets the tone for the site. And it also shows the user how the website will be laid out. So now we want to touch upon creating simplicity and clear calls to action. Simplicity is key here at Situated Research. Keep it simple. The more times you keep it simple, the easier it is for the user. And the only way to do that is to set clear goals, tell a clear story, and know what you want presented to your users. Keeping it simple gives you the biggest impact on users. It helps users easily understand the information that's being presented to them in a clean and clear manner. So some tips on keeping everything simple. Break your complex data into bite-sized chunks. We just recently worked with automotive industry on a software that they were putting into the navigation of a car. And the amount of information was just overwhelming. So we said, okay, this information can be broken down into some simple categories. And out of those categories, we can take these bite-sized chunks and even narrow it down even more and make it more simple. And so something that was crazy and complex turned into 3 different categories that were simple for the user to get data from. So taking that complex data and just breaking it down is key to simplicity within a dashboard. Providing summaries and move the details to their own section is important as well. Don't overwhelm users with too much information at one time, but allow them to dig at their own pace. So there we worked for a software company that strictly produced healthcare software, and they were making it impossible for users to dig deeper into the data. Now, not 20 layers deeper, but to actually look at different scenarios and different projections and say, oh, well, if we would have done this or done this amount or volume of patients in this department, what would our revenue have been, et cetera, et cetera. So we help them to develop that so that they could dig deeper. And put yourself in your user's shoes and ask yourself if your presentation is understandable and on target. So creating good calls to action, you have to make sure that the calls to action within your dashboard are crystal clear, they're strong, and you research users and know what those calls to action should be. There's different users using your dashboard and they have different reasons for using it or your software. So you want to do that research. You want to pull users. You want to get that information from them. So let's talk about compromising between simplicity for novice users and complexity for power users. Whenever you're designing a dashboard or a piece of software or an application, you have a large audience. You have a large user base, and not everyone is a novice user. And not everyone is a complex user. So you have to find that balance. And balance is key when designing dashboards for different types of users. You don't want to sacrifice complexity, but you don't want to overdo simplicity. So research who your users are. You can do this through surveys, focus groups, or just by doing research and actually having them come in and test your prototype. Design different sections of the dashboard for your different user types. And we're actually going to touch upon that again towards the end of the session today. So now we're going to talk about choosing data visualizations and appropriate color psychology that makes sense to your users. So data visualizations. Everyone thinks that a dashboard should be flashy, eye-catching, lots of graphic design, and that could be further from the truth. Yeah, you want it to look slick, but the way that you make that dashboard look slick is by making it simple, using strong colors that will pop out of the page. So you want it slick and catch users' eyes, but you don't want to overdo it. So there's that balance again. You have to look at the purpose of your different visualizations. We worked with a software company just about a few months ago, and they were using bar graphs. And it was for the automotive industry. And we said, how about if we change it to look like a gauge in a car, in the dashboard of a car? And they said, oh, why? We didn't think of that. So we worked with the graphic designer. We came up with a few prototypes. The developers developed it. We picked out the colors and we presented it to the business leaders, and they were impressed. They said, this is really cool. This is really slick. It's eye-catching. It pops. It's simple. And it has that reference to a car dashboard, which is really what we're trying to do here. So purpose of your dashboard is very important. We've worked with healthcare software companies, and we've made the dashboard look like a medical chart. And so that just kind of, helps the user to relate to the dashboard, what their purpose is, why they're using it. So just something to keep in mind there. So it relates to their business. And of course, we have to involve graphic designers at that point to actually design the gauges or design the patient chart. We worked with a company 2 years ago, where we were working with them and they didn't have graphic designers. And we wanted to bring in our graphic designers, and the company didn't want to pay for it. So the developers were coming up with the design. And needless to say, we ended up hiring our graphic designers just because it just didn't look right. And we were trying to make a really slick looking dashboard for their clients. And the only way to do that was to bring in professionals. Color psychology is key to dashboard design. You've heard the term before, color psychology. What does that mean? Different colors mean different things to people. And the most common colors are red, which means stop, yellow for caution, green for go. And so green can also be actionable. So you want to make sure, and usually what ends up happening is the marketing department's heavily involved in this. How is this dashboard going to look to our clients? So marketing is key because you also have to keep these different things in mind as far as what colors mean to people. But then you also sometimes have to incorporate company logo colors. And there's a whole marketing thing behind it. We worked with a company about 3 years ago where they handed us a booklet, not kidding, of about 50 pages of what we could use, what colors we could use, and what colors we couldn't, what shades, et cetera, et cetera. So that was very difficult because we know red means stop. We know yellow means caution. We know green means go. But for this company, it was kind of all turned around. So green actually meant caution and red actually meant go. And it just didn't make any sense. And we said, look, users are going to associate red with stop, alert, stop what you're doing. There's a problem. And so the company was like, oh, no, we can't do that. And the marketing department was all over us. So we came up with a prototype with the developers the way they wanted it. And we came up with one the way we wanted it and the way it should have been. And we actually brought in users to test it. And guess what? Color psychology won. Users didn't get the prototype where we were going by their marketing plan. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And graphic designers can really help out tremendously here. So here are some data visualizations. And this just kind of shows you there's 3 different ones. So the one on the left is a good visualization because it shows you that the red bar is where we're at and the green bar is where we want to be. So kind of common sense, everybody associates it that way. There down at the bottom, we have sales versus marketing, support, cases by rep, and the colors just make sense. Closed sales to date, we have red, we have yellow, and we have green. So obviously if you're in the red, you're not doing so hot. If you're in the yellow, there's room for improvement. And if you're in the green, you're good to go. So it just makes sense to people. So colors are very, very, very important. It's not just red, yellow, and green. Orange can be used, purple, any other colors. So here we have 2 other examples. And again, here at the top, you can see the KPI status. Red means, hey, we need to improve this. We're not doing so well. Yellow means there's room for improvement, and green means we're pretty good. And same with the one at the bottom. So you want to make sure when we're talking about having a slick dashboard versus a boring dashboard, the one at the top is slick looking. You know that because you can look at it visually, you see the icons, it looks great. But the one on the bottom doesn't really have any character to it. It's not slick at all. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about slick versus boring. And the boring one on the bottom has way too much information. There's too many headings, too many options for the user, and it just doesn't look fun. So let's talk about distinguishing good user interfaces from good usability or functionality. So when we talk about having a good interface, we want to highlight changes when we're going through the design process. We also want to look at keyboard shortcuts as well as making sure that buttons on the dashboard make sense to the users. Everything on the interface has to make sense to the user. If the end user cannot use the dashboard or accomplish their goals, then the dashboard is aimed useless. So when we look at good usability with a dashboard, we want to make sure that the goals have been met by all departments involved. That's good usability. If we just satisfy the requirements of the marketing department and left everybody else out, that's not a good dashboard. That's not good usability. So we have to make sure all goals are met. We also have to make sure that within the dashboard that there's no explanations needed. We worked with a software company in the gaming industry about 5 years ago now. They designed software for gaming companies to be able to create the characters for the games or the scenes for the games. And every button you hovered over had a long paragraph of an explanation of what that button did. Now, some buttons had labels on them that just didn't make sense to the users, and others had icons where the users were like, I don't even know what this icon does. And these were professionals who use this software all the time. And they're in the gaming industry. They're making characters in the backgrounds all the time. So they know they've used the software before. But the problem with this company is that they kept coming out with a new iteration of the software every year. And they would change the icons and they would change the labeling, thinking that it would make it better. And it was just confusing the designers big time. And so they're like, I don't want to hover over a button and read a paragraph of an explanation of what this button does. It takes too much time. So we worked with the company and we helped to alleviate that whole explanation and hover part of the buttons. And we came up with icons that made sense to the designers. And we only could do that through interviewing the designers and talking with them and seeing what the consensus was as far as what they would be familiar with. And so that's how we did it. The other thing with good usability with dashboards is that users understand the information that you're presenting to them. So many times we have clients that are, building a dashboard and they're presenting all this information and the user doesn't even need it. So they're overcomplicating it. Oh, well, this user might need this piece of data. But when you interview those users in that user group, they're like, we never look at that data. We don't need that data. It doesn't mean anything to us. It means more to a different department. So you learn a lot as you talk to them. Dashboards are developed in order to present data to users in different ways so that any level of user can understand it. If you accomplish this, you have a usable dashboard. So let's talk about usability research methods to understand users' workflows and tasks. The first way that we can do this is through rapid iterative testing, which I touched upon earlier, which is where we do rounds of testing, tweaking, and revisions. Normally, how this process goes is we will get a prototype from a company, and then we're asked to do an expert review. So that's basically just having one of our expert UX consultants go ahead and look at the dashboard or software and make a report to their findings. Again, anywhere from 60 to 150 pages, just depending on how much we find, of course, with solutions for fixing those problems. And then it goes back. We have a meeting with everyone involved. We go through each item. And then the developers go ahead and implement those revisions that we consents to. And then there's more tweaking. They hand it back to us. We review it again. So this happens about 3 to 4 times. And then we'll actually bring in users to test. So we'll interview users to understand their goals, what influences them in their environment. How will they be using the dashboard? Will it be at work, at home, at school? What's it for? And look at their previous knowledge. When we did that with the software company that makes the software to build characters for games, we had to talk to the designers who actually use the software and say, okay, from your previous knowledge and previous softwares that you've used in the past, what are typical icons that you would see? What are the most common icons? And then we had to develop that way. And there's also task analysis. How are users performing these tasks currently? And what are they trying to accomplish when they do these tasks? So now I want to talk about prioritizing different usage scenarios to display the most relevant information to your users. There are different user scenarios. Every user is going to have a different scenario. You might have a group of users and have 4 different scenarios. So it's very, very important to talk to your users, interviewing them. And you may be attending the session and say, I'm a manager. I think our team can interview users and ask the right questions, but you'd be surprised. Bringing in usability experts, they know the types of questions to ask. They know how to ask them without steering the user into a certain direction. And that's what always happens when we're brought in at this phase in the design process, and we're interviewing users and they've already been interviewed by the company. And the way that the questions were written was projecting a certain outcome to the user and forcing them in a subtle way to answer the questions a certain way that would benefit whatever team was interviewing them. So developers would come up with questions, marketing would, business leaders would. And those questions would be asked to the users, but everyone had their own agenda. So the way that they wrote the questions would kind of force the user to go to that agenda. So having usability experts come in, first, they're unbiased. They're not connected to your company. They're consultants. They don't have a vast interest in the outcome. Obviously, they want to make sure that your software is, you're getting a good return on your investment, but they don't work for your company. They're not an employee of your company. The outcome isn't going to hurt or not hurt them. So having a UX consultant come in to actually do those interview questions is good because they're unbiased. They don't have an agenda. So that's the best way to do it. We write up scenarios. So we literally write them out for each type of user that would use your software. Then we prioritize the scenarios from most important to the least. So we're going to talk about our last topic, which is contextualizing use to see actual usage scenarios. And then we're going to we have a little bonus section today for you guys. So contextualizing use, situated action is important. So situated action is the notion that people's behavior is contextualized. So the situation is a very important factor in determining what people will do and what their outcomes will be. In the extreme view, this is the idea that you can't generalize and predict people's behavior from one situation to the next. Thus, this suggests an approach to usability which says to understand each user's, or more commonly, each organization's specific and detailed needs in designing software for them by carefully examining how they work and how situational and organizational factors fit into that process. So there's a lot there. We do personas. Best way to do it. Traditionally, personas attempt to humanize your users and place them into different segments, but behavioral personas take it a step deeper. So we focus not only on the person and the situation that they would be using your dashboard in, but provide insight into the typical behaviors and context for the use of the product. The results are cohesive, meaningful identities paired with use case scenarios. So these help your product teams make relevant and appropriate design decisions throughout the process. So not just doing traditional persona typing, but doing that behavioral persona typing is key when you're designing a dashboard. So our bonus section, which we have never done before but wanted to do during today's session, we want to go through 10 different tips for UI design success. So we know that there are many software companies out there who are not going to hire UX consultants. They either think it's too pricey, too much money, not enough time to incorporate them, et cetera, et cetera. We do a webinar where we talk about usability consultants coming in and what the benefits are. And you'll find that it saves you time and it definitely saves you money in the long run. But if you're totally dead set against it, we do have some quick 10 tips for UI design success today for you. But before we do that, just the overview of dashboards, just to make sure, dashboard design is one of the most difficult parts of creating an application. So you can be designing anything from online business applications to quick and simple mobile apps. Knowing what data to present to your users is key. And more important, what not to present to users is an art and a science. In this bonus section that we're going to do here, you're going to learn 10 tips for designing dashboards and application interfaces that are stylish and user-friendly while still presenting important data to your users in a format that they can understand. Whether you're just starting UI design or your product is almost finished, we're going to go ahead and go through these tips and learn how to design the perfect dashboard in 10 simple and quick steps. So the first tip that we have for you is know your key performance indicators, your KPIs. Every application from mobile fitness apps to powerful online analytics software is built around a few key performance indicators. Google Analytics, for example, tracks conversions and traffic, while MyFitnessPal tracks calories in, calories out, and weight loss. Knowing those key performance indicators is the key to creating a dashboard that your users love to interact with. So your KPIs should be the first thing users see as they start using your application. It should be the key focus of your interface design. Tip number 2 that we have for you today is to keep everything light, clean, and simple. When in doubt, simplify. The best user interfaces aren't massively complex. In fact, the best UIs aren't complex at all. With the right approach to usability, you can put a huge amount of functionality behind a simple, user-friendly dashboard design. Break your product's functions down into core categories. Then use these categories to determine your interface's design. So the example that we had earlier with the software company in the healthcare industry that just had way too many categories, we had to break them down and broke them down into 3 categories from I think they had 20 or 25 categories to begin with. That's what we're talking about. MailChimp actually has, they're a great example of breaking all of their features into 5 different categories. They have campaigns, lists, reports, autoresponders, and search. Very simple. If your product has hundreds of features, just categorize them and create a tab or a layout for users to select features from. Simplicity does work, and it's always best to select clean, simple design over something cluttered but powerful. So tip number 3 is to use colors to alert and notify users. And earlier we talked about color psychology and what each color meant. We learned that colors do play a fundamental role in application design, particularly in the design of great user interfaces. Use colors to alert and notify users to different tasks, activities, features, and more in the form of button colors and alerts. Generally, it's best to use predictable and common colors. Green's a great indicator that everything's good, while orange and red can be used to indicate a small or serious problem. And tip number 4 is don't reinvent the wheel. There are certain features of UI design that are common between applications, like on websites. Almost every social network, for example, has a feed of recent updates when designing homepages for websites. Almost every B2B application has a left-aligned navigation bar and a right-aligned content section. Instead of designing your dashboard from the ground up, use features common to your type of application to speed up the design process. Drop-down notifications or top right corner account menus are well known in UI design. When designing software for a certain industry, do your research and check out what your competition's doing. Check out the software that your users are working with now and pick out common features. These UI design tips are often known as UI patterns. Tip number 5 is design for your most popular platform. You have to know how will your users interact with your application. Will they view it on their iPad, on a full resolution PC, or on their smartphone? Knowing the platform that your users prefer is key to building a powerful and usable interface. While every modern website should be responsive, which means viewable on any type of mobile device or PC, It's also important to design your website or application with your most widely used platform in mind. Things like large buttons, for example, are crucial when you're designing a tablet app. And tip number 6 is poll your audience to learn their needs. Ask your audience what they want. What do your users care about? Application developers frequently make mistakes in determining what their applications will be used for. And in turn, they focus on metrics that aren't as important as they think they are. Instead of guessing about what your users will find important, poll them, ask them, find out directly. Facebook is a great example of this. They used this strategy to understand the needs of their advertisers and released a UI update as a result. The example was they used to have impressions and they replaced it with reach. And it just makes more sense to the users. Tip number 7 is fewer options is almost always better. And I'm going to say fewer options is always better. When you're designing a user interface, keep this simple rule in mind. The fewer options there are, the fewer problems users will experience. The less of the amount of information you'll be presenting to them, which will make it less overwhelming. When your interface is straightforward and simple, you'll deal with fewer support tickets and emails. If you need to strike a balance between usability and power, just consider adding an advanced features option to your dashboard. Power users can activate advanced features using this option, allowing you to build a simple interface for other users. And tip number 8, let your users sort, filter, and organize. Think about it. Does your application display a lot of data to your users? Business applications such as analytics or advertising networks frequently display tables with thousands of cells, making it difficult to show important data while maintaining a clean design. So avoid creating a cluttered interface by letting your users choose what they would like to see. Simple filters and sorting features make organizing large lists or tables a quick and easy one-click process. And tip number 9 today is to break long tasks into short, simple steps. Are your users abandoning shopping carts and forms on your website? Are they getting frustrated when they cannot complete tasks for their job or find information that they need quickly? Especially in the healthcare field, among others, information needs to be readily and quickly available for the user to find. It could mean life or death in some situations. So usually tasks are too complicated or have too many steps for the user to go through. So shortening these steps and making complicated tasks simple will definitely help. Break down steps from 20 steps to 2. Keep it simple. And our last and final step today is provide constant help and feedback to your users. It's easy to assume that your users will naturally know what to do when they get to your dashboard. You're the designer. You spent weeks, possibly even months, designing this dashboard from the ground up. Some users will naturally know what to do when they reach your dashboard, but the majority won't. Prepare a brief tutorial to guide them through your application's key features, and you'll significantly reduce your support requests from new users. Even frequent users occasionally require help and feedback. Gmail is a great example of this. They have a Learn More tab on nearly every feature, making it easy for users to access help and learn more about the application, how the application works. So they really help out because they have the novice user and they have the complex user, and they really found that balance and know what works for different users. So they cater to both. So I've talked the whole time about all of these different topics, designing usability into dashboards, how to keep that balance for your novice and complex users, how to get good usability in there, how to prioritize those different usage scenarios, and to talk about workflows and tasks. And then we have that bonus of the 10 tips to help you with your UI design. So we actually did not have any questions during today's session, which is remarkable. I usually do. So if you do have any questions, you can contact us at info@situateresearch.com. You can also visit us on the web and like us on Facebook. Remember, today's hashtag is SituResearch so go ahead and follow us on Twitter if you would like. I'm going to go ahead and leave up this contact information for just a few moments, and we're going to go ahead and end the recording. So I want to thank you all for attending today's session. And again, if you have any questions, just simply contact us. Thank you.